passionate about Cleveland sports.
He's going in, touchdown!
Browns, Indians, Cavs, the Big Ten, and more.
Cleveland is a city of champions once again.
Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond.
Swinging it line to deep right.
Here are your hosts, Andy Billman and Jarid Watson.
Hey, hello and welcome. Andy and Jarid, Cleveland and beyond. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jarid Watson.
Cleveland Browns.
And the Cleveland Browns head coach search is in full effect right now. They've checked names off of Dorsey's list so far, a few of them. We'll get into those. And a couple of possible surprise names that we didn't expect. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the odds of Greg Williams and Freddie Kitchens actually, getting a fair shot at the gig and whether that's actually happening or not. Andy, the first thing I want to ask you is, I'm already kind of upset with the word that there's this big committee that these folks are having to sit down in front of large groups of Browns representatives. I think three's company at this point, and you're talking about 6, 7 in the room. Give me an idea of why you think, because I don't know why the Browns are doing it this way, besides, I don't know, the Haslems can't help themselves, which is my automatic go-to.
Well, Happy New Year. It's been a while. All right. I will never be able to answer that first question, but here's what I would say. This is kind of par for the course for the Haslems. Yeah. Let's have as many people in the room as possible. You know, I try to research like what other teams have done in the past, what teams are doing now. I'm sure it varies. When I've done interviews in the past, when I've hired people, whatever, I might have as much as 3 people in the room. I can understand that. I think 4 is a lot. I think 6. The rumor that came from Adam Schefter over the weekend is the supposed group is 6. And for people who haven't seen, it's John Dorsey, Jimmy Haslam, Elliott Wolf. I think those 3 names are pretty standard, right? I think those are pretty standard names.
Sure.
I think people are expecting Alonzo Highsmith after that. He's not on this list. The next one is J.W. Johnson. For people who don't know, he's the executive VP of the team, and his background basically is he's Haslem's son-in-law. So you can take that for what it's worth. That does happen a lot, by the way, so people shouldn't get too upset. That is a typical NFL thing. Ask the Cowboys with the Jones boys and other teams. I mean, not unusual for that kind of stuff to be happening. Paul DePodesta and then Andrew Berry. I thought Andrew Berry's name was interesting, Jarid. That's the name that I pointed out. I'm like, because Highsmith, Berry, and there's another gentleman. They're all on the same VP level.
Who is Berry? For anyone who's not in on everybody in the Browns front office, who is this Berry guy, and why does that stand out to you?
All right, so previously, for people who don't know, let's all cover our eyes. Remember Sashi? Remember Sashi? Sashi's right-hand man was Andrew Berry.
Okay.
So basically, let's go back 2 years ago. If you want to really break this down, today it's John Dorsey and Elliott Wolf. 2 years ago, it was Sashi Brown and Andrew Berry. So Andrew Berry was the guy who was basically, he was the guy, in my opinion, Jarid. You can break this down any way they want, but Sashi Brown didn't have an NFL background really when it comes to player personnel. So Andrew Berry was selecting these players. What I found interesting why he's in this room is that's a supporting cast member for Paul DePodesta. What I read into the search committee, and this is I don't think it's a great thing, actually. DePodesta and Berry still hold some weight in that building.
It seems like, and this is what made me nervous, these are guys that Dorsey's going to have to defend his arguments against when it comes to talking to and convincing the Haslems. That frustrates me. I don't want a barrier. I don't want a barrier between John Dorsey and the Haslems.
There's two. There's 2 barriers. There's the Haslem family, which was Johnson and Jimmy himself, and then the other barrier now is DePodesta and Berry. So there's a lot. This is why this coaching search has gone the way it has, because it's going to take a while with 6 people in a room like this who are all thinking very differently. You have the owner, you have player personnel, and I'll call them analytics. So you basically have 3 points of view here going into these interviews. That's a lot. That is a lot. I don't think that's good. I think that's a lot.
What are the odds that these people in the room, because Dorsey's putting on a clinic and teaching them how to evaluate?
Maybe. But again, Deep
I feel like that's a shot in the dark.
Right. Yeah, Deep Podesta, though, does hold some weight. I mean, I wasn't surprised Deep Podesta was on the list. Again, Andrew Barry's where I took a step back, Mike. So basically what they've created, I will say this too, the days of hearing, if this is true, Dorsey's controlling this, Dorsey's not controlling a lot of this. I think Dorsey has a lot of influence, but the control factor is no, if this is the room. It's not a lot. It doesn't have a lot of control, to be honest with you.
And this is what I've bitched about from day one, Andy. Before this search even started, this was my number one gripe about this situation. That I feared that this would be what happened, and here we go. Here we go. Yep. It's a traveling circus, Andy. It's a traveling circus.
Okay. I'm not ready to go there yet.
I am.
But because there's confusion. There's definitely
you are
confusion
who you show me you are.
Right. I mean, again, we gotta give this time, and let's see how it goes next week. But this kind of goes to my point of now, well, this is why there's such a wide net being cast by the Browns, because they have a lot of wide opinions in this room. It's going to be interesting to see how this turns out.
No one's opinion matters but John Dorsey's.
Well, not according to this list. According to this list, sounds like analytics will have a third of a say on this. Sounds like a third of the say will go to the ownership group. And by the way, Dee Haslem's not listed on here either. You got to figure at some point she'll be in these meetings too. That's another voice. I will say, no matter how this breaks out, this is a lot of voices.
They're recording the interviews for her review later.
Right. And by the way, that could change things. Because I would figure at some point that she's going to be involved too, I would think, but maybe not. I just see this as a lot of people. I take Adam Schefter for putting something out. Like, he knows when you put out a tweet like that, it's going to get some pickup. So let's not be naive. I think this has some truth to it. Again, kind of what you're alluding to, it's going to be interesting to see if the circus really plays out here, meaning I will say the reason why I'm saying it's not a circus is because I haven't heard any crazy rumors, or I have not heard any dysfunction in Berea. So that gives me – there's that positive. And by the way, this organization has a horrible time hiding that, and I'm not getting any of those vibes yet. So I think that's a good thing. That's a good thing. We're not hearing that yet. We're not hearing infighting. We're not hearing people on disagreements, which, again, normally happens in Berea. So I think that's good so far. I will say that, Jared, to keep you feeling better, we haven't heard any of those rumors yet.
I'll take that, but part of that might just be on the part of the fact that John Dorsey's got the patience that he has with this, and where my fear in that is that he just disappears after this season on his own. You know? No,
I don't think he will. I don't think he will.
Not, I think, but I don't trust anything, Andy. I've got 17 years of reason to not trust. You know? I hear you.
And by the way, you're not the only one feeling this way. It's not a unique feeling right now.
Yeah.
And again, that list will give more agita for this. I think, though, let's let this process play out. I will say, for all that said for that list, again, typically there's some sort of Browns dissension with these hires. I've not heard that so far. I'm not hearing people that are on opposite ends of the room. So keeping that aside right now, I think it's going normal. Again, that room, though, is heavy on people.
The moment somebody tries to get cute with this is when that stuff starts to happen. You know, the moment that somebody wants to be the smartest man in the room, that's where I think those rumors will come out. I'd pay attention over the next couple of weeks. I mean, there's been a lot of distraction over the past week during this because of you've got the wild card weekend, you've got all that stuff going on. The end of the season is so fresh that we'll see how this plays out. I think it's a slippery slope. I think that we're setting ourselves up in the same manner that we have in the past. But we said we're not hiring outside committees, but we're doing it this way. It feels the same as it ever was to me. The difference being that the group of guys is a little bit different. Hopefully they get along a little bit better. And of course, in Dorsey, I trust. And I'll leave it at that.
I agree. Yeah, and Dorsey, I feel the same way you do. You just hope in that room again. Everybody has to realize now there's a lot more voices in the room. Hopefully he is the influencer. That's what you have to hope here. What I've taken out of the search show so far, going to now the actual candidates, what I found interesting, Jared, is I think we're actually at a point now where if I had to guess, we've had 6 people go: Williams, Caldwell, Stefanski, Campbell, Flores, and I believe it was pronounced his name Eberflus, the defensive coordinator for the Colts.
Yeah,
sorry.
I got to work on that one too.
Yeah, if Eberflus is our coach, boy, I'll be going to YouTube a lot, listening to Eberflus. And then Flores as the pass defensive coordinator. What I gathered out of all these names is, some buzz, little buzz, not a lot. But what I found interesting is you had all these guys go, and now McCarthy's coming this week. That's interesting to me. What I gather out of something like that, yes, some of it's because of coaches like Flores and Eberflus they have games.
Right.
Eberflus just came from Houston right to Cleveland to go back to Kansas City, and then New England got the Chargers this week. But what I took out of this is, if I'm thinking correctly, and this is where you might be feeling better or worse depending on how you go on this. Select your 1 or 2 favorite candidates, and there's a lot of people who are from Green Bay who loves Mike McCarthy, so they're going to support him full on this, because that's how I read this. And by the way, no mention yet of Kitchens being interviewed. Is Kitchens last? Is Kitchens going to go before McCarthy? I don't know. But McCarthy coming in the way he's coming in makes me wonder, Jared, if they're going to select 1 or 2 people they've liked from this pool of 6, and then comparing that with McCarthy, because McCarthy is a big name. I know people have agita for this guy. I like McCarthy. I think McCarthy would be a good hire.
I don't know that I can go against that idea either with McCarthy, and I'm wondering if the hold off on Freddie Kitchens might have more to do with the idea that they're hoping that whoever they bring in wants to retain him as OC.
Yeah.
And that's what they're hopeful their goal is going to be, is to make that marriage, make that arranged marriage work, which doesn't normally happen. Guys come in and they want to do their own thing. I think that if it is a McCarthy, that Dorsey's got the influence with McCarthy to make something like that work. Possibly,
right. And I think McCarthy will obviously be open ears with Dorsey as well, because they work together, to your point. So I think there is a little bit of that there. Yeah. For people who are, giving McCarthy crap, and I've been hearing a lot of that, people need to remember, too, that he did build a big thing there with Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers was a first-round pick, but Aaron Rodgers was not like a glowing first-round pick. He was picked later in that first round, and people didn't know what to think, and there's been a lot of credit given to McCarthy for molding him into what he is. And also, he handled the Brett Favre situation well, and he did win a Super Bowl. So I think people need to remember that McCarthy can coach in a big spot. So I think McCarthy coming in the way he is a good thing. I think McCarthy's going to be either in New York or in Cleveland. I think it's really that simple. I think the Jets are really on hold right now because they're wanting to see what the Browns are going to do. I think the Browns and Jets are linked because I think McCarthy's going to go to one of those 2 spots. That's what everything's pointing to. The only buzz I've heard about any of these names is Campbell, the assistant head coach to the Saints. It sounds like there's a little buzz about that guy so far. I didn't really hear any about Williams or Caldwell or Flores, and Eberflus just happened, but I didn't really get a vibe from that either. The only thing I found interesting, too, in all these names is they are not allowing Kitchens to interview anywhere else for an OC job. So Kitchens, I will say this, Jared, I think Kitchens being a head coach, I think that dream is basically dead. I don't see that happening.
I never really did. It didn't make sense for me to put that much responsibility on a guy coming out of the position that he came out of. I think that you let him shoulder the OC position for another year, a few years, and then there you go. And then the guy's will get his shot. I mean, that's just the nature of the progression of things. And we're talking about a guy who, he'd been in the league for 7 years prior and was never really jumping out at anyone until this season, anyways.
Right. I think the other thing too, going back to Williams for a second, I don't think it's helping Greg either that no one's reached out to him for a head coaching gig either.
Is that surprising to you? Do you think that has something to do with people not getting along with Greg Williams, on the above side?
I think it's 3 things. I think all 4. I think the Bounty Gate thing still lingers a little bit in people. Not a lot, but a little bit.
Shouldn't, but second
is age. I'm not a big age guy. I don't care how old or young you are. I just want to win games, but I know that does bother some people. And right now, currently, the trend is going with a younger, hip coach. Sadly, Greg does not fit that mold. I think 3, he's a defensive coordinator, and this is not a defensive coordinator league right now. Even with these guys being brought in as defensive coordinating, I just don't think that plays well for Greg. And I think finally, Greg has kind of resigned himself, even through a press conference interview, saying, "Hey, I'll come back as defensive coordinator." When you say that a few weeks ago, you're kind of acknowledging that you're ready for anything. I just don't think Greg Williams is that. He's had his chances to become a head coach.
Yeah.
I don't think Greg Williams is. I'll say this. I think Greg Williams becoming the Browns coach, the longer it goes, the less it gets. I think Greg Williams becoming the Browns coach is at 5%, maybe 10.
And the players didn't exactly jump out in support of him staying too. And I don't know that that's telling. I don't know whether they were all told, "Hey, just keep your heads down through this process."
Right.
But it does kind of surprise me that some of the louder mouths on that team, the Myles Garretts, the guys who speak their mind, didn't come out and say, if they wanted him to be there, I have a feeling they would have said, "Man, why would you at least say what everyone in Cleveland's saying? Don't screw with something that's working," and none of those guys really said that.
Right. And I think I think that's smart on the players right now. I think this is a big decision. This is something that we have not talked about maybe enough. This decision is so big for the Browns, knowing what you got in Mayfield now. This is everything. That's why you're having such a big search committee. That's why this is taking so long. Yeah. This is the largest decision, Jared, and it feels that way for so many reasons, and as it should. That's why I think players at times too might have paused, because you have to realize, even as a player sometimes, like this next coaching gig, I love Greg Williams, but when you hear some of these other names, and again, nothing against Greg, when you hear a name like Mike McCarthy, I don't care what anybody thinks. That's an exciting big name who's won a Super Bowl. Man, that just is what it is. I know the Jets, as I live in this part of the country, Jets fans love the idea of Mike McCarthy coming to New York, and they want him to be the head coach tomorrow. Jets fans are all over the idea of Mike McCarthy becoming the next head coach.
Well, I mean, the more time that's gone on with this, the more I've come around to the Mike McCarthy stuff, mainly because the more I think about why he's out over there has so much to do with the quarterback position and the fact that, who we're talking about is a guy in Aaron Rodgers that has had his issues with getting along with anybody.
Yeah.
And including family. Now, who looks bad in that situation? It's not McCarthy.
Right. Well, again, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I think this is a fascinating way how they've interviewed all these guys, and they're saving McCarthy almost for last. You have to think they're going to choose 1 or 2 people to pit up against McCarthy, and then the selection goes from there. I think Kitchens gets interviewed this week. I think McCarthy obviously goes. Jared, I'll say this. I don't know how many more people you need to interview. There's always people that like to interview to kind of pick people's brains and see who's out there. The only interview so far, and then we'll go on to the next few points here. The only interview so far that did surprise me is Stefanski out of Minnesota. I know he's the new hot name. But, God, you were talking about new and hot. He wasn't even the offensive coordinator to start the year. So I don't know how much you can put in something like that either, but for what it's worth, I think that this week with McCarthy, I would not be surprised if rumors start coming out of it's McCarthy pitted up against either 1 or 2 of the people we mentioned before. That's my feeling on this.
How soon do you think that they're going to come out with this hire? Do you think that they'll have a hire? You think it's going to be before February or by mid-February?
I think it will. If I were the Browns, you're starting to get into this part of the year where you got Senior Bowls and stuff. The national championship games tonight. After this week, it really goes in the full board draft mode for these players, right? And it really kicks off the Senior Bowl, and you get all these other things that are coming out. The longer it goes, the more chances you have on missing out on things. I understand taking a first slow week. I like how the Browns did that. They did not make a quick hire. By the way, no one else did either. So I think the Browns did the right approach here. But if I were the Browns, I would try to hire someone in the next 7 to 10 days. I think it's important to do so. And because teams are going to start getting eliminated, you want to get those offensive and defensive coordinators in. There's just a lot of assistants roaming around. the more you wait, the less chances you get to keep one of these guys or get one of these guys. So
I think the fact that
important.
McCarthy's going as late as he is says a lot in this process. And then I'm also going to say this. Mike McCarthy, if you ever listen to this podcast, if this job is offered to you, why in the hell would you ever choose the Jets over this absolute perfect opportunity?
I don't know.
You know, I couldn't. I just can't see that happening. I think if they want him, they get him. I can't either.
I can't. And again, familiarity in the building with Elliott Wolf and Highsmith. I think this is going to come down to McCarthy and one of these names with Kitchens. I think the only question with McCarthy is, would he bring Freddie along? I don't know if he would. And by the way, he would have the clout to say, I don't want to bring him along. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I think, if you held a gun to my head, and I'm in Vegas, I think right now McCarthy's going to get it. I do. That's just the way this is going, in my opinion. I think I'm leaning the same way, and I think that it's very telling in his interview position on when it's happening. At the end of this process, there's a reason why he's going last, and I think I do think that there's gonna be that kneading of the dough to figure out whether he can make this, whether John Dorsey can convince him to do it along with Freddie Kitchens. That's another thing. If they're not letting Freddie interview, that's got to be the reason. It's got to be the reason. I don't think they're going to get cute on this. I think this really has to do with, with whether or not they can retain Freddie as offensive coordinator. Man, I got to tell you, I think it can happen, Andy. I really do. I think that it can happen. If it's got to say a lot that Dorsey is sold on Freddie at that offensive coordinator position. Yeah. To hold him and not allow him to interview, and still be bringing in a Mike McCarthy, I think it's possible. I'll just say this: I think if McCarthy gets the job, I think it's less than 50-50 that Kitchens comes along. I don't think Kitchens would come along. I just don't. But I don't think it would surprise me either. But, again, if McCarthy gets hired, I'm okay with that because I know who McCarthy is, and I'll choose a guy that will work well with Mayfield. It'll be all right. It will be. It'll be all right. Now, if you got one of these other coaches and you don't have Freddie, ask me again.
Yeah. I mean,
I may not have the same response.
No, Greg Williams would be the only other one. That's it.
Well, that's my point.
And that ship seems to have sailed.
I think so.
Yep.
We kind of touched upon it. I mean, I agree with you, but look, we're Browns fans. It's been weird. The one gig I'm hearing a lot about that people seem to be that's above the Browns is the Packers job. Which I'm not. I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers, so you get it. But that team seems to be older. Most other people seem to have the Browns. There's some people that have the Broncos listed above the Browns job, which I think is insane. But I think the Browns is the best job. The argument that I would make for only the other teams is the Jets, because they do have a quarterback as well, and they do have a plethora of resources. But again, I think the Browns job is far better than the Jets right now. Yeah, I really do.
I don't think there's a question. I think that if you are questioning this, that your name's Mike Silver, and that's it. I don't see how anyone could argue that this gig isn't the best gig in the NFL right now.
I agree. Like I said, I've been surprised. A lot of people seem to think the Packers job is on par with the Browns.
It's not.
I get that's because of Aaron Rodgers. But if you really look at the Packers, like there's a lot of – not that the Browns don't have work to do either. I mean, the Browns still need to win some games throughout this whole season and make the playoffs. But the Packers don't exactly ring off as like, hey, they're going places that with Aaron Rodgers and pseudo head coach. I mean, Rodgers was somewhat healthy again this year, and he's always been banged up. I don't know. I mean, I know it's Aaron, and I love Aaron Rodgers.
Well, and they were struggling with playmakers towards middle and end of the season too, right? I mean, they
have been forever. They really have been for a while now.
Yeah.
It's like that's a new problem. I don't know. We'll see. Again, I get it. I do love Aaron Rodgers. I'm a big Rodgers guy, so I totally get it. He can flick the ball, and he's so good at it. So it totally makes sense on those levels. We haven't talked in a while. I think, going backwards for a second, I think the Ravens and Browns game. I think the big thing we haven't talked to you. I haven't done this in a while. The one thing that really did stand out in that game, I know they came back. Great to see Mayfield play. Bummer that they lost. I know it's not everything in the world. I kind of texted you that night. I just wish the Browns would have won that game. I know it didn't have any meaning. I know it doesn't care. Again, I'm not naive. They weren't making the playoffs or anything. But I thought that would have been a good way. I've been hearing people saying, "Oh, it's so heartwarming," and even though they lost, I wouldn't have called that loss heartwarming.
No, it was frustrating. It was frustrating, and you saw the glaring needs that the Browns have. You saw the development that needs to happen with Baker taking care of the ball. You saw the issues in other areas of the football that game, that especially run defense. Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
But you heard Tony Romo talking about it. The Chargers took from that playbook, from at least the way the Browns were trying to approach that game, and they were able to execute.
Yeah, I mean, if you've listened to us all year, here's the one thing everybody needs to know. Aside from the Bronco game in Denver, where they did shut down Lindsey, they shut him down.
Yeah.
The Browns' run defense has been, awful.
Well, has Jamie Collins Sr. been the biggest disappointment on that team this season? Were you expecting more out of him?
I've heard his name a lot. I don't think he played well. I don't want to defend Jamie Collins, because I know he hasn't played well. I know he has not played well at all. I see people on that team having just as much struggles as Jamie Collins.
Okay.
So Jamie Collins to me is in a pack of people. I think we all pick on Jamie because of why he got traded here.
Yeah.
And again, he deserves the spotlight. He gets paid a lot of money, and he's a guy who swings a lot of weight in his teams. He's very talented. Is he playing well? Absolutely not. No. But I love this guy. But I thought when he came back from injury, he wasn't the same. I thought Schobert really struggled down the stretch. I'm not sure if he was injured or not. Haskins got torn apart. And, let's be fair. Aside from the Bronco game, Peppers really didn't play well, honestly, for being truthful. The Denver game, he played well.
Man, there's so many that argue that he has, that this was his breakout season, Andy. There's a lot of people that think that he is meeting his achieving his potential now.
I don't know.
I'm gonna pull a Hugh here, and I'm gonna say I gotta look at the tape. that's how I feel about it. I gotta look at the tape.
That. I mean, I thought Peppers really played poorly against the Ravens. I guess that's my point. I think you can point out all these different things, saying that's why. Okay, maybe in fairness to Peppers too. I think it's a group thing. I also think the interior defensive line is a problem. I know we got guys in there that we like, but I don't know if they're going to make the cut next year for this team. I think we really need to get better people that play the interior. Honestly, Jared, too, I think we need someone to match up better with Myles Garrett. Yeah, I don't know if we can go we all love the idea of Myles Garrett, and he made the Pro Bowl and he's great. He needs a buddy to kind of help him out. And
I would love to have that. Why not? Stack that line.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah, I mean,
do it. And I don't care if they use a first rounder to do it. Between that or the linebacker position, I think is our biggest needs right now, and I think that's what they need to do. Yeah,
I agree. I think Ogba's fine, and we all, at the end of the day, he's not a bad player, but we need someone to really stand out there and make more plays on the defensive end side opposite of Garrett. I think Ogba needs to be rotated in and out with someone is basically what I'm getting at. And again, the interior defensive line, Ogunjobi played his heart out. God bless him. Played with a torn bicep. But we need some more guys in there to help out. And again, the interior linebacker, Jamie Collins. And again, I love Schobert. And Schobert played really well the first half of the year. But I thought Jared, after he came back off injury, if I'm being truthful, Schobert did not play great.
No, he didn't. He did not. And you know what? There's no depth. We know that too. There's no depth on that side of the ball. And what I worry about is Ogunjobi, from what I heard, is deciding to rest that bicep this offseason and not have surgery. I worry about that long term. I obviously don't know the extent of the injury, but
here's what I would say about that. I know when you do any kind of muscle surgery, it's never a 100%, hey, guarantee your muscle's going to heal back.
Yeah.
So it's probably the reason why it's pausing. And I know from other athletes who've had that kind of surgery, it's not an easy surgery. It's tough. So I can understand him wanting to. You don't ever want to have surgery if you don't have to have it, right? So, but to what you're alluding to in today's medical science, you always wonder, like, wouldn't you just want to have surgery so you're really knowing you're ready to go?
Hey,
so,
I don't know. Stem cells are a miracle. Maybe you just inject some stem cells in that bicep and it grows right back. Who knows? I don't know how this stuff works. I'm not that guy.
I know. Yeah, again, I'll just go back to this in the Ravens game. The run defense aside, which again, any game except for the Bronco game, if anybody were to defend the run defense, I would laugh out loud. Our run defense was not very good all year. But the other thing about this game is I'm so excited about 2019. You look at Mayfield. You look at how Callaway made – I'll be fair. I picked on him. Callaway played great down the stretch, really played well, looked good. Chubb is a stud. He's going to be a star. And, you can see the pieces really coming into place on this team. 2019 is where it's at. I just would have loved to see the Browns have that win. So I think that win could have carried a little bit more clout. I'm not a believer in that, hey, this loss will make them more hungry. I'm not a believer in that. I think you can have that loss during the season, Jared, and it can help your team out. I don't think losing at the end of the year really helps carrying into motivation for next year. I'm not a believer in that. And the only thing I'd point out to the Browns, I do think they're going to be going big places next year. Something to remember, too, for this team, we booked in again this year with a tie and a loss. Love to see a win either to begin the year and end the year, right? It'd be nice to start winning the opener and winning.
And I think they will. You know what? Because we're talking about, is it a motivating factor going into next season? And let's talk about this. I don't think it matters. I think a win or a loss doesn't matter at the end of the season because of this. No matter what they would have done, your quarterback is coming back, and he's never going to be satisfied, period.
That's true.
That's true. That is more important to me, I think, going into next season than anything else. We used to have to worry about that. We used to have to worry about these things. We don't have to worry about it anymore.
No, fair point.
All the worries of this team are on that man's shoulders, and he is carrying it, and he doesn't care. I'm not the one who won't be satisfied.
No, I agree. And again, to wrap up that game, I'm so happy for Baker he broke that record. Yeah. And to score that many points on that defense on the road, the Browns offense, and
the way they did too, and the way they did it, down the field, and he had the protection he need. Let's talk about this too. The protection that Baker got throughout this season is the best protection we've seen a quarterback get in a Cleveland Browns uniform. I think in 17 years that they've been back, 18 years they've been back.
They've had really good protection. But I'm not going to try to tear apart what you says. I agree with you. They've had, the Browns actually have had pretty decent offensive line play for a while. Even when it's been poor, it hasn't been terrible. But I agree with you. The offensive line play was great.
And part of it is that he knows how to get rid of the ball. So I shouldn't say, maybe that is a part of it, that one of my blind spots. He knows how to get rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm. No question. So we're all excited about next year. I think there's no question about that. And again, I thought the Browns offense outplayed what the Chargers did on Sunday. I really did.
Oh, I sat there and watched all those games this weekend and thought to myself, the Browns would win this game. The Browns would win this game. The Browns would win this game against any of these.
Here's what I felt. I agreed with you, but the Browns defense actually has to get better next year. That was my other comment to myself. Like, the Browns defense needs to get better next year.
Yeah.
It needs to get better next year. Yeah. It's not quite to this level yet. It's just not.
No.
It's just it's funny. The whole year has been about offense. I think it's actually the defense.
Do you think that? I think that might be one of the damning parts in regard to Greg Williams too.
Yes, I was about ready to say the same thing. Exactly.
You're Mr. Defense.
The other thing I want to touch. Yeah, exactly. I want to touch upon this quickly, then we'll get around to the other stuff, and then we can wrap up the Browns, talk more about them at the end of the week. What did you think of the stare down from Mayfield? I hope Mayfield and this Hugh Jackson thing goes away next year. I think it will, and let's use the coach at Cincinnati, which, by the way, seems to be in play.
Yeah, that or the Vikings, I'm hearing.
Yeah, I heard that too. I think the Mayfield stare down. Did I like it? No, I didn't like it. I wish Mayfield wouldn't have done that. Do I think it's the worst thing in the world? Absolutely not. There's worse things that are going on. Mayfield staring down Hugh Jackson. Yeah, I didn't like it. I did not like it either. But at the same time, was it horrible? Was it despicable? No. Let's just leave this alone.
Well, I think that part of the reason why I agree and feel that way as well, especially looking back on it now, is Hugh is a guy. I feel bad for guys like Hugh. Like, Hugh doesn't know he's not a good head coach. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like he was doing this stuff on purpose.
Right.
He's oblivious to the fact that he's not a good head coach. And so I feel bad in that sense for people that are like that, I guess is the way to put it. So I'm ready to just move on. I don't need to beat the dead horse. I think that this is over and done with. I think that any team that would hire him as a head coach is insane. And I'm all for seeing the insanity ensue, but I'm ready to just bury this in Cleveland.
Yeah, I am
forever.
Too. I just
throw it in the lake for
too.
good.
Again, right, and again, that's why I don't think any of this is that terrible. It's pretty obvious Mayfield and Hugh did not get along. All right, anybody, and we weren't inside the building, so I don't know, but that's why he's doing what he's doing, and you know what, Mayfield is that kind of player. And again, there are players on the Indians in the '90s who did the same thing, talked a lot of trash and had no problem, and I love that about them.
And we loved them.
So I like this about Mayfield.
I loved
too.
Albert Bell.
Do like. Oh, Kenny Lofton. I mean,
yes.
There's a lot of chatterboxes. Yes. A lot of chatterboxes on the Indians. But when it comes to this thing with Hugh and Mayfield, I will say I'm ready for this to move on. I am. Unless Hugh was the coach of the Bengals. If that's the case,
but you can't have the hangover twice a year after you play Cincinnati. You can't do that.
I know. And
Nor
by the
should
way,
you need to, because Cincinnati's not going to be a team that you need to have that type of, I don't know, rivalry with. They're not going to be that good.
Well, if they have serious injury problems. I mean, they have talent on the roster, but they have serious. I mean, Dalton, AJ Green, those are two of your obviously bigger players, and they both didn't play a good majority of the year. The Bengals have to get healthy. The Bengals are going through a huge transition. They really are. And Dalton is a question mark himself, even if he is healthy. You got to wonder how much longer they're going to be going with him.
Yeah, I don't know what they're looking at. This might be it for him. This season might be it.
Yeah, before we get to the stuff on the weekend with the NFL, it is, and everybody's bringing it up. I guess we should bring it up too. Yeah. It is interesting in the North now how you got – Baltimore, I know they're bringing back Harbaugh and Jackson, but we all saw yesterday there's definitely some question marks going forward on how that's going to work out. It sounds like Flacco's going to be going to a new team next year. We'll have to see how that plays out. But Baltimore's definitely got some question marks. If you don't think the Steelers are going through some change, you're naive. You're definitely not going to have Le'Veon Bell back. I think it's questionable if you have Brown back. I think there's already been some remarks about Roethlisberger, who is coming back. He's already announced, so no rumors about that this offseason. But you could tell Roethlisberger's already trying to make contract changes to try to bring Brown back. So that's a whole thing. And the one thing I took from the whole Steelers playing out last week, for whatever side you're on the aisle on these arguments or whatever else, it's pretty clear to me that Tomlin and Antonio Brown are not getting along. That's what I took out of everything last week. It's very clear. Those two are not getting along.
I love this, Andy.
I do too.
I love it. I watch Steeler Nation on social media losing their minds right now. I saw one person who I grew up with who posted that the NFL is fake, following a comment about the Steelers not being in the NFL or in the playoffs this year, and now all of a sudden, because of that, the NFL is fake. They're in full meltdown mode in Pittsburgh.
They are,
and they're blaming the wrong people. In my opinion, I'm fine with that too, because it tells me that they don't know how to fix it. That they're going to continue.
No, they don't.
They're going to continue to bury their heads in the sand to the reality of the real problems here, and the real problems have to do with Tomlin and Roethlisberger. Period. I can't see how what are these other guys? Who are they going to bring in if AB's not there? Who wants to come and play there? Juju Smith-Schuster is only as good as AB being on the field.
I don't agree with that. I think Juju can play. I really think Juju's a good wide receiver. I don't know if he's a lead guy, but he's a playmaker.
That's the point, though. That hurts them.
No, it does. No. Look, when we had Jarvis Landry and everybody was hurt, remember how bad the wide receiver position was for the Browns?
Right.
We were bringing guys off the street, okay? How much did it help? And this sounds so strange, but how much did it help when Higgins came back? It settled down even someone like Landry, right? It's the same thing with Juju. If you're the only guy out there, it's not good. It doesn't matter how talented they are. It's not good. So you need to have other guys around you to play well. The Steelers are definitely in a transition mode. And again, I don't know how I feel about any of it. And by the way, I don't care. I hate the Steelers. I don't care. But the one thing I took out of all that was Tomlin and Brown are not on the same page. And not only are they not on the same page, they do not care for each other right now. How can you bring a guy like Brown back?
And what I love is we talk about this.
Like him?
We talk about this being a transition period, but they're not even aware of the transition. Like they're not.
I know.
You know what I mean? Everyone else sees that it's transition time, and there's no transition in sight. I don't see a transition coming. No,
I agree. I'll leave this with the Bengals too. I think the Bengals are definitely on their way down. But the only thing, again, like all these teams, they're not like. If I were being truthful, the Bills, I don't see a lot of hope from the Bills outside of the coach. I look at teams like the Lions, I don't see any hope. I just think that the Cardinals, dreads. The Bengals, the Steelers, the Ravens, they all have enough to win games and cause issues, but they are far more in flux. The Browns are on their way up, and it's exciting. It's exciting.
Yeah.
It's exciting to see.
What did you think?
It really is.
I heard the comment, going back to the Ravens and coming off of yesterday's game, I heard a comment following the game that kind of drove me nuts, and I can't remember who said it, but it was in the post game, and it had to do with I don't want to hear people saying Lamar Jackson can't throw now. That fourth quarter proved he can. And in my mind, all I thought was, one, prevent defense, and two, you're in desperation mode and you make a few passes. Whoop-de. Like, are you kidding me? That guy is not an accurate passer. He's not the future of the Ravens. And even Ravens fans think he is.
Well, I think he is because the Flacco's going to be gone.
Well,
I don't think that's the right move. I don't think that's the right
that's
move.
What I'm getting
Flacco. At. Yeah, I would keep Flacco in there. I really would.
Draft.
Yeah. I'll just say this, and I don't want to pick on him too much. Let's talk about the Charger game for a second.
Yeah.
Since we're already there, Lamar Jackson really, really looked shook for 3 quarters in that game. He not only couldn't pass, he was fumbling, he was getting sacked. That was the Lamar Jackson I saw play in Louisville. When he's on, he's on. He's very good. He's tough to tackle, but when he's off Jarid, that's what I remember him in Louisville. I mean, looked really like a small guy who couldn't do any. Jarid, how many times did you see him duck his head for a sack?
Yeah.
In that game?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't do anything. I mean, that is such a give-up sack move. And of course you see that. But Lamar Jackson did that quite a bit yesterday. I just think this whole Lamar Jackson comparison, which I didn't hear a lot of, but there's random people like, hey, is Lamar going to be that next big star? It's like, hey, I would really pump the brakes on that because of what we saw on Sunday.
Andy, I know bad quarterback play. I've seen it for almost 20 years. I know what quarterback. I know what it's like to put your hopes in a quarterback that you know deep down is not gonna pan out. And when I hear fans say he's got to learn how to pass and he'll be okay, you're in the NFL. It's too late to learn. You've already learned it your whole life, and now you're here. If you can't do it now,
that's an oxymoron.
What are you talking about? He's got to learn how to pass in the pocket. What are you talking about?
That's an oxymoron.
It's not going to happen. He is who he is.
Nah,
he's showing you who he is.
I know. Again, I've been saying this all year. I would take Joe Flacco over Lamar Jackson anytime. I will say Lamar Jackson got hot this year and played wonderfully.
At the right time, absolutely.
At the right time, and he made plays. And I'll tell you this, the Browns did no help because the Browns defense looked horrible.
Made him look good, yep.
I mean, so again, like Lamar Jackson has moments like that where he can play well. Over the long scale, I thought what I saw on Sunday is what I'm thinking of Lamar Jackson in the big spots.
And after you give a team a second time to evaluate and bring a new approach to shut down what he was doing well.
Oh, agreed. And I'll say this too. For the Ravens, there was a lot of people hammering Harbaugh for not bringing Flacco in, and I kind of agree with them. I mean, how could you not, after that first series in the third quarter, really be confident you're John Harbaugh? Like, hey, Lamar's going to bring us back to victory. Really? Boy. Flacco had to go in that spot. He thought long-term instead of winning a playoff game. We'll see if that bites him in the end. I thought Flacco,
I think you could see the anguish in Flacco's face on the sideline throughout the third and fourth quarter, too.
Yeah. I thought Flacco should have been in there after again, you got to play Jackson through the half. But after the first series in the third quarter, I get that. After that first series, which was terrible, goodbye. Sorry, we'll play next year. We'll figure this out. We got to win this game. I think
it was the only way that you could have won it, especially because the defensive scheme that they were schemed for, that would have been the biggest change. And it's not like the Chargers were really doing anything offensively that a little tweak on offense could have fixed for the Ravens with a quarterback change, and they would have. I think that could have changed the entire dynamic of that second half, and they refused to do it. Maybe we'll never know why they refused to do it. The commitment to, I think what you saw on display is the full commitment to Lamar Jackson at the end of the day, and I don't know that's a good idea.
I agree. The other take I want to do this now is on the Chargers real fast. That was shaky.
Wasn't that a fun ending?
Rivers. I know you were saying something on a text me, and I understood what you're saying, but it's like the Chargers really tried to lose that game, I thought at times.
Yeah, they did.
I was not impressed by the Chargers whatsoever. That's why I thought the Ravens were going to win that game. The Chargers do this. Phillip Rivers gets away with a lot of stuff, I think, that other quarterbacks don't get away with. He didn't play well. His numbers weren't that much better than Lamar Jackson's.
No.
Just saying.
I will say there were some drop passes that were pretty bad, but you're right. I know. He did not look
but Jared, he didn't play that great either.
No, he didn't.
I just think
Antonio
the Chargers,
Gates his number one receiver in that game too, probably, I think.
Chargers are just overrated. I do not understand them, and it's such a shame they get to go play New England in a cold weather game. You don't even have to ask me who I think is going to win.
That's going to be
chalk walk to the AFC Championship game
they're
again.
Butts handed to them. I know. I know.
It's going to be
and it wasn't supposed to be that way. They were supposed to have the tougher game.
No, I know. I'm telling you, this has everything of a signature. Pats are going to go out as a winner, and then everybody retires. It just feels that way. By the way, that'd be good for the Browns, so maybe that wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I thought the rest of the games this weekend stunk, aside from the Bears game. I even thought the Cowboys-Seahawks game was okay. I didn't think it was really that great play. Look, one thing real quickly. Everybody gets on the referees in all these games, especially the Charger game. Jared, I thought this was what it was all year, so I didn't really see anything that surprised me. I thought it's been bad, and of course it's going to be bad again. I know that people have been really on the referees in the Charger-Ravens game, but to be honest with you, I thought we saw that kind of referee stuff all throughout the year.
There's nothing that surprised me there. There's nothing that surprised me. There's whistles blowing, then there's whistles not blowing, then there's a line judge trying to call a touchdown who's standing on the 1 yard line leaning. Did you see? I mean,
that's a great line. There's whistles not blowing. There's whistles blowing. It's so true. It's so true.
What are they doing?
There's guys who catch the ball and then fumble it, and no one recovers it.
Was there a guy in the booth who even said too that? I think there was who was it in the booth that said they're making it up as they go along? It's at one point.
Yes. Yes. It's alarming. But again, it's been this way all year. So I was really miffed by people saying, this refereeing's terrible. I'm like, where have you been all year? It's been awful all year.
Yeah, hi.
Get on the referee bandwagon.
The Browns have 4 apology cards sitting on their mantles right now for the refs this year. So
yeah, gosh. All right, let's get to the Bears game real quick. Everybody's talking about Parkey this morning. Boy, was that a terrible, terrible missed field goal.
It was tipped.
That tipped, hits, doink, doink, out.
It was heartbreaking.
It
was a microcosm of kickers for the entire NFL season, just like we talked about with the refs.
So bad. It really was. Here's the one thing I want to bring up in this game. So I thought the Eagles were going to win. The Bears defense that was lauded and championed all year. Jared, what happened in the big spot with Philly down by 5 with 3 minutes left to go in the game? What did they do?
Handled it.
They right down the field and scored. Sometimes people put these labels and, the Bears defense is so great. The Bears defense is very good. It's not great. If they were great, they would have stopped them in that spot. They didn't do it. I know everybody's piling on Parkey, but the Eagles went right down the field. They went on a long drive and won the game. I thought all year Mac was a good addition, but I think the Bears defense was not a lot, just a touch.
Well, the Eagles offense felt to me very much like the Chargers offense, except they had, with the amount of opportunities that they had that were kind of squandered on drives that would stall. Yeah. On drives that would stall. I mean, you're looking at. I mean, Nick Foles didn't have a bad game on paper, but he had what I would call like one of those Eli Manning games with dink and dunks, and there were certain things where his numbers looked good, even though they lost. That was a game that they, in my mind, if Chicago could have had some semblance of an offense, they would have won that game. They did not.
I mean, Trubisky played okay to good. I think some people are going over top. I will say Trubisky, though, in a big spot, made big throws. That was one thing I took away from that game.
Yeah, maybe I'm taking.
That's why.
Maybe I'm a little too rough on Chicago on that side. But
yeah, Trubisky made big throws in big spots. The thing about the Bears that I kind of said the reverse for the Browns, the Bears are a couple playmakers short to make a big run.
Right.
Their defense is right there. I mean, their defense is right there. They have a very good defense, but there are a couple playmakers short on.
Here we are again, though, Andy. A year later, with Nick Foles taking over in the postseason, and does that guy? What is his deal? What is the deal with him? What happens with him after this season?
He's a free agent. It's going to be. I'm telling you, the game. We'll have to do this on a different podcast. We'll get into this. Well, I'll be getting into this more later because of time. But I'll say this about Nick Foles: they have an interesting decision to make, and I think the Rams game this year changed everything. Because then days later, Long made that big play for it. He made that mural for him in his locker. I think the Eagles. Even Peterson alluded to it, because right now, technically, Wentz still can't play. He may be able to play this week. What do they do?
I don't know. If you're the Ravens, you play them.
I'll tell you. Even Peterson admitted to those guys at NBC, it'd be tough if Wentz was healthy. What to do? It's interesting. But anyways, with that said, heartbreaking loss. God, that poor kid Parkey. This felt terrible for him. But again, I know everybody wants to jump on Parkey, and by the way, we're all fans. I would have lost my brain. That's how the game would have ended. I'm not going to say I would.
And he made the one they froze him on.
I know. Such a typical. Oh God, that's such a bad loss. Such a bad loss. But all that to be said, I thought the Bears really lost that game on that drive. You're supposed to be the number one defense, all that stuff.
They mismanaged clock at the end too terribly. Did they not? They wasted like 20 seconds, I think, before they finally. And I said, dude, I didn't want them taking that shot at the end zone. I thought they were going to find a way to run it down.
It was weird. They were kind of in a hole. It was weird. The defense lost the game. To me. Got to make that stop. Didn't do it. And that's that. Colts dominated. The one quick thing about the Colts, I kind of saw this coming, and everybody did. 10 out of 11 wins now for this team. Luck made one bad pass or two, but he played well enough, played good. Colts really looked good, but I thought again, is on the other side. The Texans, man. After the Jets game, I was starting to really look at them differently. This is, and here's the one note too. J.J. Watt jumped off sides, almost similar to what Myles Garrett did, and boy, did that cost the Texans big in this game. Both, all the bad penalties. O'Brien had a terrible game. I'd be interested to see if he doesn't get fired here in the next few days. I thought it was a fireable loss.
I think it was a very disappointing. It was the Texans were underwhelming from what you had seen out of them. They could not get anything going offensively. It was brutal.
Nothing. And boy, for everyone want to harp on Lamar Jackson, Watson did not play well. Didn't play well at all.
Yeah.
Didn't look good. I'm sorry. I mean, everybody keeps talking about, Watson this, Watson that.
But again, he's another guy that used his legs a lot in that game, and you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And uses it just nope. They didn't let anything happen, and they kept. I don't know, that cutie kid had a good looking game, but aside from that, Lamar Miller, DeAndre Hopkins, nowhere to be found.
Watt didn't play well. I just thought that game was alarmingly bad. Again, that's the kind of game you can lose your job. It's the kind of game you can lose your job. I would not be surprised if O'Brien lost his job in the next 2 or 3 days. It's that kind of loss. It was bad. It was a really, really bad loss. And the other thing, too, I took out of that, it's like, Watson did not play well in this game.
No, and he wasn't looking. That was the other issue. What I do remember from that game, now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, is that there were times where they had the right matchup on DeAndre. On that side of the ball, on that side of the field, and he never would look at him. He never looked his way. He never put the ball up for him. It didn't happen not one time on probably 4 or 5 occasions where he probably should have went that way.
No, I know.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I need to look back. But from what I remember in that game, he did not give DeAndre Hopkins the attention that he should have, and that's on Deshaun Watson's decision making.
I agree. I just think it's interesting how everybody's piling on Lamar Jackson. And by the way, rightfully so, Lamar Jackson played terribly. But so did
I'm only doing it because I love it because he's in the division. That's my
I agree.
only reason.
I agree. No, I just think nationally, Deshaun Watson deserves some of this too. He didn't play well. The other game was Cowboys Seahawks. Again, I thought this game was okay to good. I thought the Bears game was the one game. Bears game was very good. I thought the other 3 were blah. But this game, I thought it really came down to, and this is a credit to this guy, Ezekiel Elliott.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott won that game for the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
He made a big run. He really carried that team on his shoulders. Dak made enough plays with his legs. He had a couple throws, but again, accuracy there kind of in question. But he made enough to win the game. But again, I thought Ezekiel Elliott really won that game for the Cowboys.
He won it for him, and Amari Cooper had a really good looking game too.
Yeah, when he got the ball, he made big plays.
Yep, and opened at the right spots at the right time.
Agreed. Cowboys will give problems to the Saints. I don't know if they're going to win, but they'll give problems. No, I'm sorry. The Cowboys don't play the Saints. What am I saying? Cowboys play the Rams. Cowboys can give the Rams some problems. I think that's a tricky game for LA. The one thing I want to end on in Seattle is this. This team is still hungover from that Super Bowl loss.
Still.
Wilson's a good quarterback. I like Wilson a lot. If you ask me to point out another big positive on Seattle, I would have a hard time doing it. I don't mind Carroll. I think Carroll's a good coach. Seattle really needs to figure out what this is because they have a good I like Wilson. I think Wilson can play, but they just don't have the parts and pieces around him.
No, and their run game was basically non-existent as well.
Nothing. But they don't have, again, no playmakers. Really no playmakers. Mm-hmm. Seattle's a strange team. It's a strange team. I don't know. I have a hard time putting my finger on what you do there. That's what I came around with. So I'm like, I really like Russell Wilson. I don't think Pete Carroll's a terrible coach. I think he's good, but it's not working.
No, they almost overachieved. They overachieved.
Yeah. I don't know. Seattle's strange. It's strange. I'll be interested to see how they do next year. I don't think it was a bad year, but I don't think it was a good year. I don't know. That was just all over the place. A couple quick other things. Then quickly we'll do college football. As I sadly have to run in a few minutes.
Okay.
Kirk Cousins, I would really keep your eye on that. I think that is a torch that's just being lit in Minnesota. I don't think that's going away. We talked about the Steelers. I think the other thing here, too, that I found interesting from the prior weeks was Mike Mayock becoming part of the Raiders. I think that's actually a good marriage of Gruden. I think that could work.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good move for the Raiders. I like that move. If I were a Raiders fan, I'd be happy with that move. That was a good move. I did.
By the way, any credence to the rumors that they might end up playing in England next season in London?
It's the Raiders. They are just so strange,
right?
Boy, Mike Mayock, welcome to a stranger. They are such a strange.
Could you imagine if I was in that division? I would be throwing a fit right now. I would want nothing to do with traveling.
I think that's just rumor. I really do. I think they're putting pressure on the city of Oakland. I think that's all that is.
Okay.
I don't believe any of it. I will do. Look, okay, we're done with the NFL. I'm going to do a big thing on Notre Dame on our next one. We just don't have enough time today. I can go. I can go on and on and on. Let's just say that was a blank show. Alabama does play tonight against Clemson. Here's a couple things I took out of all these bowl games, Jared, and I'll do a bigger thing on this on Friday just because of time we don't have to. What I was interested in these games is Clemson obviously overmatched Notre Dame. I'm going to get into it. I don't have time to. Alabama, Clemson's a good matchup. I really enjoyed how Lawrence played against Notre Dame. It drove me nuts as a Notre Dame fan, but I thought Lawrence really grew up in that game. They have enough playmakers. I think Clemson has enough to win this game. I just don't think they will. I think Tua's going to play good. He looked really good against Oklahoma. I think Tide wins by 10. But the one thing I took out of both these games, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Clemson, Notre Dame, is Clemson does have the parts to win. I didn't think that going into this bowl season. I do now. Clemson can win this game. I didn't think I was going to say that.
My takeaway is that I think that the bowl needs to expand. You got to go to 6 or 8. I think you have to. I think you have to because there's it's just I think that's a better way of solidifying the vetting process. You know what I mean? It's a way of allowing them to vet it out on the field as opposed to leaving these decisions up in the air with the playoff with the committee, and I don't know it's not sustainable. It's not. You've got too many people that are screaming for it. I think that we can finally put the UCF stuff to bed too. Can we do that?
Yeah. How about this? Yes, but that's another reason to expand.
Yes.
UCF played well. They played well.
They did.
I have no idea why you tried to pick fights with that.
They played well against a team they should have played well against.
Yes, and a team like LSU that could have blown them away, and they didn't.
Yeah, there were a lot of injuries. Let's face UCF was missing their quarterback. On defense, LSU had a lot of folks missing, I believe.
Of course, it's hard to rate that game. I know you're getting that. It's hard to rate that game.
But at the end of the day,
I thought UCF actually said, well, I never watching that game going, well, UCF might deserve a shot. I actually thought in the loss they proved a lot to me. Again, do I think they're one of the top 5? No, I don't. No, I'm not even saying top 6. Top 5, I don't think so.
And then,
but in a given game, in an 18 field, 16 field, not crazy. Not crazy.
Well, and we can also say this too. I'm glad that Urban Meyer, in my mind, that went out. I never imagined that a Buckeyes win in the Rose Bowl would feel like a fizzle. That's how that felt. That whole era just seems to have fizzled out.
Thing. We have enough time to do Ohio State, so let's do Ohio State.
All right.
I thought the same thing. I thought that was a very weird end of the game reaction from everybody on the sidelines. Very, very odd. Very odd. Very odd.
Well, jumping forward before we jump into the game a little bit more, just to give you a little more idea of the fact that, and Buckeyes fans, Urban Meyer really isn't going anywhere far from that university whatsoever. Obviously, he's going to be teaching, but he was on the sidelines at the Ohio State Michigan State basketball game, sitting on the down there with Haskins and Fields. They were all sitting together. I think that's strange.
I'm just going to see. Okay, let's talk about Urban Meyer next week on Friday. I will write this down. We're going to talk about Urban Meyer.
Let's do it.
I sadly have to run. But I got to talk about it.
All right, go do what you got to do then, Andy.
No. I've got to talk about Urban Meyer. I got to talk about it. That's what I talked about 2 months ago, whenever that announcement happened. He's not retiring. I'm telling you.
He's like a proxy something right
He's
now.
not retiring. There's no way. It's not in him. Telling you. Not retiring.
I thought it was so strange to see that Fields kid sitting there with Haskins. Like there's a lot to talk about with Ohio State.
No, I agree. So we'll get to all those things. Don't worry. I will get to the Irish for everybody who wants to know my thoughts about that game. They are now, I will have plenty of thoughts on that on Friday. And we'll break down the Alabama-Clemson game. But again, the one thing I'll take going in this game, Clemson has the playmakers. They have enough players to win that game. I just think Alabama's better. I thought Alabama's defense got exposed a little bit. The one thing about the Oklahoma game, that game, people saying, oh, it was kind of a game. It was never a game.
No.
Alabama was 21-0. For people like, oh, it's kind of competitive. Oh, bull, blah, blah, blah. Come on.
No.
Come on. That game was never in doubt. Oklahoma made it respectable. Murray did enough plays. He's a good player. There's no question. The one thing I took out of that game was Oklahoma's offensive line is really, really good. I mean, that offensive line, that's no joke. Their offensive line's talented.
Well,
because they really held out.
Kyler Murray will be playing baseball. So that's what I take out of it.
I agree. All right, so to wrap up everything else, I guess we should touch it. Let's do the Indians first and end on the Cavs. Cleveland Indians. The Indians signed Kevin Pilecki. He's a Boilermakers, I'm sure everybody knows. So obviously, I love this hire. I love this trade. Here's the one thing about Pilecki, now being more serious. Not a great hitter. He came in as a defensive catcher. It's dipped recently. His defensive skills have been a little bit frayed the last 2 seasons, but he still knows a defensive catcher. When he is playing and he's focusing on that, his defense could be actually a huge plus. He's just not a great hitter. Again, I talked about this. I kind of shrugged my and I like Pilecki. He's a Purdue kid, but I mean,
Andy, the more that this goes along, I'm disappointed and I'm underwhelmed with what we're going to be going into this season with.
Yeah,
I really am.
Yeah. The one trade, I agree with you. No buzz. I'll tell you about this team. The one trade I don't like still is Jan Gomes. I don't like that trade.
No.
I don't like. It's the only trade I can't wrap my head around. That's saying I understand it. I don't understand that trade still. Not understanding that trade. I don't like that trade at all.
Well, I think the way that it looks now is that they've cleared the books for a possible midseason move if they're going to in the hunt to take the division. That's.
I would rather have Jan Gomes on my team start the year. I'm just going to say I would really watch the catcher position if I were the Indians. I think it's going to be in flux all year. If you're making trades for Kevin Pilecki, boy. I don't know. I think the catcher position is going to be an interesting position for the Indians. I thought outfield would be the position to watch. I think now catcher is right there with it. Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs have lost 9 in a row. And by the way, they're about ready to go on a huge West Coast swing after the Pacer game tomorrow night. I think the Cavs are in full swing here of losing a lot in a row. Which we kind of foresaw throughout the whole year. The big 2 or 3 things I take out of these last couple weeks, and it's just been Cavs have not been competitive. They've been getting blown out in a lot of these games. Sexton's getting hammered for his play. I'm going to defend him. Who else is supposed to be playing point guard right now?
What do you want?
I don't understand
right now.
I don't understand. Like writers and a lot of people. Oh, Sexton needs to get benched. Who? For what? I mean, Sexton is. I'm not loving the development of Sexton in this. I don't know. I think Sexton's really going through the hardship of the NBA
left
right
out,
now.
Yeah, he's left out to dry. He's on his own. What exactly? What's he going to get? What help is he going to get right now? Who's developing? What are we talking about here?
This is my fear of tanking like this, because now you're starting to see the things like when it's funny when Tristan went out with that injury. All these errors and stuff. And by the way, the NBA season really does take a next gear after the holidays, and I think the Cavs are feeling that too. There's always a gear shift after Christmas, and the Cavs are totally feeling it now.
Yep.
And by the way, they are not ready for it. The other notes I'll get into real fast. Everybody made a big hubbub about this Patrick McCall signing, and then they cut him yesterday for Cameron Payne. I just think the Cavs really need to process how this is going to play the next few months. Because if they don't beat the Pacers tomorrow night, which, by the way, they probably won't. The Pacers are really good, even though I know they beat them last time in Indiana. Jared, they may not win for a few weeks.
I don't expect them to. But let me ask you this, though, Andy, on something maybe a little bit more entertaining than watching a Cavs game right now. Bill Simmons making his comments last week about if the Cavs were to win the lottery pick this year and were to get Zion, that Cleveland doesn't deserve Zion, and that if hypothetically speaking, that he would be who the number one overall pick would be, and also saying that he would quit covering sports if that were to happen. That's how angry he is about the Cavs.
See ya. I don't know what to say. I mean, I took it as another knock. I took it as another knock against the city of Cleveland that was unwarranted. I think in a weird way that sounds like a jealousy. I mean, what, were you jealous? Do you think this is fun? You think this is great that we're losing all these games?
Yeah. I don't know.
I'm tired.
Exactly. That's my point. It was untimely. Like, it was unnecessary. It was unwarranted. It was unprovoked. Go to hell, Bill Simmons. Nobody cares. Shut up.
I talked to Bill in a couple years, so to be fair, I haven't talked to him at all recently. In fact, I think last time I talked to him was 2016 in the winter. So it's been 2.5 years, okay, or 3 years. 3 years. Got my mask off. 3 years. Okay. But that said, like if I talked to Bill, like, Bill, relax. We might get the number 1, 2, or 3 pick. By the way, if we do, it doesn't mean anything until you start winning games, anyways. So
I think that's his point, is that it's a way that we're going to find a way to waste that talent, and that
why?
Because of the way that the team has managed to not keep LeBron happy, and to all of those things is what it comes back to in his mind.
But the Heat. I don't know.
I know. I thought it was a silly. I thought it was a silly comment that I didn't understand where it was coming from. I
didn't even see it. I you know what? I hate saying it. I'll say it. It's clickbait. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Clickbait. Like,
yeah.
I don't even take that seriously. I really don't. It's like, your team's playing well. I don't. Any season out of all the cities, Boston's chapped about something.
Boston's
you want
got a habit of being spiteful towards Cleveland sometimes, and I don't understand. There's some sort of strange thing going on there, and I don't get it.
And by the way, it's great. It's cool. Bring it on. I love it. I love when people doubt Cleveland, and not doubt Cleveland, but they're angry. We think we're icy fans and we're just nasty. You know what? We're not going to win the lottery. And we're going to draft Zion Williams.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's Cavs uniform, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, screw off.
Tough crap.
Go cry over some Dunkin' Donuts and leave me alone.
Not only that, you won the World Series. Tom Brady's your quarterback. Shut the blank up.
Yeah, what do you...
Relax.
Exactly.
Relax. Don't worry. Baker's going to go into New England next year and beat the shit out of the Patriots. It's going to be great.
Yep.
It's going to be great.
Yep.
Sorry for the mom. Had to say it. Tired of Boston fans. I know your wife, and I like her so much. She's such a kind woman. It's everyone else.
That's all right. She doesn't. I always tell her she doesn't watch enough to make me not. That's how I am.
But there are some same Boston fans. But yeah, boy, they are unlikable. They are, for him to say that.
And they don't have to be. They make themselves that way with garbage like this. Garbage. Yes.
On our next podcast, we'll go through all the Notre Dame struggles and how we're not as bad as it was in 2012 loss to Alabama in the 2013 championship game, and I'll tell you my real feelings about that. And Michigan didn't play 4 starters, and we'll talk about Georgia, all that stuff for college football. I bet you by the beginning of that week 2 on Friday, we're going to hear more about the Browns' job. I bet you McCarthy interviews by then. We'll hear more about that. The Indians will be trading for more backup players, which will now be exciting. And the Cavs hopefully will win a game by then. But I think the big thing to take out of all this for the Browns, I think we're leading to a point now, Jared, where you're going to hear McCarthy gets interviewed. One of the names, I think one or two names, probably one will get selected, and then there'll be a boat race to see who wins. Again, I think this is all leading to McCarthy becoming the coach of the Browns. That's what I see in this. That's what I've learned over the last week. At the beginning of last week, I don't think I would have said that. I think now, I think McCarthy's the favorite unless one of these guys really stand out to the guys in the room. I think that's what it comes down to.
Head coach search committee. Boy, oh boy, am I excited about that.
Again, well, Andrew Berry's surprising. Surprising.
All right, Andy.
That's surprising.
Go do what you got to do. I'm just glad to be back to life right now. For anyone, nobody realizes this. I was awful sick from New Year's Eve until about a day ago. So thank God that's basically over with. Andy, let's do it again in a couple of days, and we've got some other announcements coming up too that we'll keep under wraps right now, but we will talk about soon. So there you go.
Many announcements will come. And I think it's going to be it's an exciting 2019, and I am glad to hear you're feeling better. I was very concerned. We tried doing a podcast on Saturday, and Jared called me, and I'm like, yeah, we're not doing a podcast.
I was going to fight through it.
Oh, God.
Yeah, that would have been awful. You're welcome,
Fighting
everyone.
through it would have been a proper phrase. It would have been a fight. So, again, we'll get into more about the Irish, as I do want to talk about that. We'll get into Alabama, Clemson, but more importantly for this podcast, I think by Friday, Jared, or Saturday, whenever we do this next, I think we will have an idea of a two-man or maybe even a hire. I think it's gonna be one of those two. I think it's McCarthy and someone. Would be my guess. I think it's one of these names. You can guess who the vibe is, but I think that's what you're looking at by the end of the week. My opinion.
Sounds good. He's Andy Billman. I'm Jared Watson. Andy and Jared, Cleveland and beyond. Thanks for tuning in, folks. Talk to you again soon. Take care. Happy New Year.
Love you, Bill.
Hey, don't forget to follow Andy and Jared Cleveland and Beyond on Facebook at facebook.com/Cleveland and Beyond, and on Twitter at CLE and Beyond. That's at CLE and Beyond on Twitter. You can also shoot us an email, andyandjared@gmail.com. Looking forward to hearing your comments.